Hello, welcome to my channel, Re-Vera. My name is Steve. Thanks for coming by. In my last video, I might have been a little bit doomer. Very well justified. I think that future is the future if the left loses. However, like I said, it's not time to take the black pill yet. The left can win. So to balance out the doomer from the last one, I want to explain how the left can win in a very plausible way that's easy to understand, because it's not that far-fetched. We're balanced on a very narrow margin here, and the future could go one of two ways. But we just need to be working to push it in the direction we want it, because there's a lot of people working to push it in the other direction. So, the fundamental problem we have right now is that we don't have enough people who are politically engaged. So I know there's a lot of leftists who are fans of the idea of a vanguard party and workers' party and other things like that. If we don't have enough politically active people to win a primary that in 2016 only 7% of the population voted in, then you don't have enough power to do anything, whether it's revolution or third party or anything else. This is a grim reality that people don't like to face. And this is why I call third parties LARPing. Because if you can't win a primary with 7% of people voting, you're not going to win in a third party, obviously. They always say, well, we only need 5% so we can get federal funding. To get federal funding to do what? You're still not going to win. All you're going to do is make it more likely that you spoil the election and give it to the fascists, and then we don't get fair elections anymore. What's a third party going to do when there's not elections anymore? It's nothing. The fact is, the unarguable mathematical fact, based on what our system actually is, first past the post presidential system, is that the system is by far most vulnerable to change at the primary level. You just cannot argue with this. So, if 7% of the people vote in a Democratic primary, if we had 5% that voted for a progressive candidate, that candidate would be the presidential candidate for that party. Just 5% of the population. What percentage of the population does it take to win a presidential election as a third party? 6-7 times that? It's far more vulnerable at the primary level. If you can't win the primary, you cannot win the third party. And it's funny, the same people who will tell me that no, it's impossible for a progressive to win a primary because the DNC is going to rig it, are going to then turn around and talk about how the DNC and RNC rig it against third parties. They're also going to talk about how we've been voting for the lesser evil for 50 years, 100 years, all blah, 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 and it's never changed anything. Look, we seem to be getting worse. Now we have Biden. Yeah, guess what? People have been voting third party all of American history too. Has that changed shit? No. So the goal for the next couple of years has to be getting 5% of the population to be politically active and left. And they don't have to be extreme radical socialists. Like, this is the thing. a lot of leftists don't seem to understand going step by step. They want to just jump to like full socialism, and if it's not there, it's not good enough. It doesn't make sense. We're not going to do that. This is why everybody needs to be pushing the positive example of Norway more. I think I'm going to do a whole video on that. But Norway is like the most left developed country on the planet, and the best country to live in on the planet. It's in the top like 5 or 10 countries by like every metric. And it's also, and this completely blows up the conservative talking points who believe that the leftist countries of Europe are imploding financially. It is the most financially stable country, developed country at least, on the planet. Like, you go pull up the report on Wikipedia that sorts countries by national debt, and you'll see that they have the largest negative number because they don't have a national debt. They are net lenders. And have the largest margin of net lending of any developed country out there. So why would we talk about China and USSR or North Korea and come off defending these authoritarian hell states when we could be talking about Norway and how that's empirical proof that leftist policies work? Because we need to go back to what worked, which is 2016 Bernie. And he talked about Nordic countries. I think Norway is specifically the best example to point to. And we need to, in the next couple of years, because we have obviously 2022 elections, and we want to get more progressives in Congress, and then 2024 again, we need to park here. We need to start winning more elections. So we need more people politically active. We cannot expand our power base without winning hearts and minds. So, in a nutshell, to wrap up, what is the plan to win? The plan to win is to win enough people over, normies, what have you, to basically fairly sock them policies and be politically active so that we can get somebody like AOC as president in the bully pulpit and more AOC types in as progressives in houses and senates and in state elections and all the rest of it. And by the way, it's not just policies that's important. So if there was, for instance, two progressives primarying each other, like, it's not just policies that make the difference. It's the ability and the desire to fight back. Because lots of people have progressive sounding rhetoric, but then they compromise. Or the news is critical of them and they just like take it. What makes AOC so exceptional is the way she fights back. The way she uses social media, the way she has her epic clapbacks and doesn't just take it sitting down. That's important. We need somebody who fights. And I still haven't heard anything from her. She turned, according to my reading of the Constitution, which is pretty plain, you need to be 35 to be president. She turns 35 October 2024 before the election. I don't think, I hear people telling me she's too young, and it's like, I don't think so. Anyway, whoever it is, whether it's for president or other elections, it's important to have that fighting spirit. And once we get somebody like that, and obviously this spring, I was getting the chance to actually imagine Bernie Sanders as president because he was leading the betting odds for a month as the front runner for the presidents to be a candidate. And obviously that's a heartbreaker for all of us. I'm going to hold a grudge against everybody who contributed to him losing for the rest of my life. But he lost. But if somebody like that was president and they had the bully pulpit, look at how far Trump has pushed the country right in his time. Well, guess what? If we had a progressive who actually represented the people instead of just a fake populist like Trump, they would do so much for the movement, you wouldn't believe it. Now, a lot of you are saying, yeah, but AOC is not a real socialist, and Bernie's not a real socialist, and yeah, but you have to take a step at a time. If we get somebody like that, a progressive, in office, they will raise taxes on the billionaires. They will force billionaires to provide better conditions for their workers. They stop the rising wealth inequality that, as I mentioned in my last video, is what is giving us the deadline. Because if we don't stop that, they're going to become powerful enough we will never be able to stop them. Stopping the bleeding is the first step. It'd be great to just go full socialist right off the bat, but you can't do that. If we get somebody like Bernie Sanders or AOC, and they're talking in every press conference about class consciousness type things, that raises class consciousness. You can't go socialism without mainstream popular class consciousness. And this is why we need them, because they're going to talk about wealth inequality. They're going to talk about why this politician is supporting this bill because this pharmaceutical company that paid the money told them that. Right? This pushes the country left. This opens people's mind to socialism. And I believe if we had somebody like AOC in the presidency, every 2 years after that, we would have more and more power in Congress. We'd get more and more policies through. They would help the country more and more. They would reverse this trend that is going in a direction that eventually won't be able to stop. They'll start bringing it back. And as time goes by, if we take the opportunity to educate people on why socialism is important, we can get more and more socialist. And, one of the things I said in my last video, and a lot of people will tell me it's impossible to do this, and I'd love to deal with any of those criticisms one by one, if anybody wants to. I disagree. For instance, in my last video, I said that if the billionaires pooled their money, they could buy our military. Right. But what would they buy it with? US dollars? You and I and the American people control US dollars. If a billionaire even hinted that they were going to do something as traitors as that, we could freeze or confiscate all their assets if we had progressives in control of the government. They have considerable power, but their power is not universal. If we had that bully pulpit to speak to people from, if we could put pressure on media's outlets that were lying by showing how they're lying from a platform that they cannot deny, like, we can reverse this trend of history and go in a leftist direction. Another reason people say it's impossible is because the DNC rigs the primaries, and absolutely they lean on the scales. But they're still they still want to win elections. They still care. In 2020, they were a lot more scared of the implication of them rigging the election than they were in 2016, because the Republican Party used all the allegations and proof of them actually leaning on the scales in 2016 to help Trump win. And there's only so much they can do to lean on the scales. If 5% voted in an election that only 7% voted, they can't lean on the scales hard enough to stop that. And here's the thing. What actually stops that? Well, it's actually like kind of, you could say, deep state operative. It's DNC people. It's state, local officials that make the decisions that, we're going to close this polling location because we don't have enough poll workers. But it's just going to happen to be that all the locations we close are going to be in places that we think the progressive's going to win. Right? That's like a local official. You and I, if we get active in politics, if we attend our Democratic Party meetings, can hold these people accountable. We can get to know them. We can put pressure on them. And we ourselves can insert ourselves into the party structure and prevent that from happening. The system is most vulnerable at the primary level. There's just no denying it mathematically. Like I said, it would take 33, 35%, whatever, to win as a third party. Some people say more. It's anyway. I don't understand how somebody can argue. Like, you think if 15% of the people voted in the Democratic primary, the DNC would be able to rig it hard enough to stop the progressive from winning? That's less than half what it would take to win as a third party. Third parties are political LARPing, and I don't care if you're in a non-swing state. Why vote third party, which does absolutely nothing except give them federal funding, maybe, which will then hurt the Democratic Party, which will then hurt democracy, because then we'll have fascists in charge. I don't want third parties getting federal funding and spoiling the election and giving it to Trump. Of course I don't. There's no possible benefit from voting for a third party. There is a possible benefit to voting for Biden, even in a non-swing state. And that is that Trump is almost certainly going to contest the results of this election. That's why he's refusing to accept them in advance. He has no reason not to. He has investigations going all over the place that are going to try to indict him and put him in prison, and so he fucking dies in prison if he leaves the White House. Right now, he has executive privilege. He has power. Once he leaves, he doesn't. He has no personal reason not to go out fighting. They're going to have to drag him out of there. Now, if you think about the GOP broadly, they're in a similar position because of demographic changes. They're like a dangerous, cornered animal that will fight and claw and shred and destroy everything around them in an attempt to survive, because they're cornered by demographic changes. I grew up conservative. I know this. I've been hearing about it my whole life. That the demographic changes, people, the boomers dying out, that's part of it. Younger people coming up, as well as those horrible, dirty brown immigrants coming over and voting Democrat. Because of these changes, the modern right is going to cease to exist if something doesn't change. I've been hearing that my whole life. And the one thing they always say to watch, like any time you hear this rhetoric on the right, watch Texas. If Texas turns blue, we're done. This is why they go fascist. Because if they close the borders and go in the direction of an ethno-state, it's going to stop some of these demographic changes and give them a chance to cling to power. That's what they care about. Fascism only cares about power. They don't care about any other principles. They care about power for the majority. And there's been polls where Biden has won Texas. The modern right is fucking terrified of this. They're seeing their life flash in front of their eyes, metaphorically, when they see Texas turn blue in a poll, even if it's just by 1%. If Texas is in play, they are fucking terrified. If they win power again, they're going to do anything necessary to make sure that they can win future elections, because they know they're not going to win future elections past this without heavily rigging shit. That's why they've canceled election security briefings to Congress. We have to vote Biden, and then we have to be active in future primaries at every level, local, state, federal. We need to get progressives in office as progressives, but we also need to vote in the general, and we need to vote for the lesser evil. Even if it's a shitty-ass Democrat, they're probably at least going to vote in favor of democracy if any of these things come up that would hinder it. And that's important. So that's the only way that's the only way the left can win, in my opinion, is electorally, using how vulnerable it is at the primary level and voting in the general to stop the bleeding and keep democracy alive. Now, there's a lot of leftists who like to I think, LARP as revolutionaries. And, they sit around in book clubs and read theory and fancy themselves the Vanguard Party and stuff like this. And I'd love to talk to any of these people. And I respect what they're trying to do. I just don't buy it. I can envision a future where it is necessary for the left to mount a resistance against the government of the United States. I can imagine that. I'm not advocating for it. Calm down, YouTube. But I can imagine it. A fascist future where they're coming for leftist activists and minorities and locking them up in concentration camps, and we have to mount a resistance and hassle them and harass them and keep the revolutionary spirit alive. And you can mount an effective resistance against the United States military. That's why we are still in Afghanistan after 18 years. They prove that it's possible. But you can't beat the United States military. In order to do that, you would have to be able to hold a location to exert power from. And the United States military can destroy any location on the freaking planet if they know where you are. They have bunker busters that can penetrate through 15 meters of solid granite and then blow up your shit. And that's the non-nuclear options. You can't beat that. The only way a revolution would win is if generals and portions of the military were like coming over to your side. And the chances of that aren't great, especially when we don't have enough power to even win a primary. It's just not going to happen. So, if you think I'm wrong, I'd love to hear it. Most of the time when Vanguard people talk to me, they're going to tell me about history. Well, there's this time when this third world country did it, or 100 years ago when they did it in Russia, blah 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 blah. Yeah, in basically every instance, it's a government whose military, pretty much the highest level of their power is a gun, and the revolutionaries also have guns. Same. It's like not too difficult. Maybe they have a few tanks. Tanks, not really such a big deal for a resistance. I mean, they suck, but it's a whole lot different than a military that has full satellite capability to monitor everything. They have drones that have thermal imaging and fly faster than the speed of sound and can drop a missile right down your freaking ass. Like, no. It's a little bit different. Apache helicopters, like, holy shit. The military has so much technology to kill you with. It's possible to harass them as a resistance, and that could be necessary at some point. So yes, I do believe leftists should have guns and know how to use them. And of course, you should keep them locked up and safe, because guns aren't to defend your house. Statistically, you're much more likely to kill somebody you care about, or enable somebody you care about or yourself to commit suicide, or something else like that. Like, having guns loose in the house is a super bad idea. It does not help keep the house secure. But you should have them. You should know how to use them. Just because fascists do. I saw a tweet. There was a fascist exercise today. Did you? It's a good point. We should exercise, keep ourselves in shape, because the other side is. But the same goes 10 times more important for guns, because I don't care how many push-ups somebody does. It's the guy with the gun who wins, not the guy who's in the best shape who wins. So for the same reason, I could also say that a fascist was at the gun range today. Were you? That said, I just, real quick, since I'm ranting and rambling again, gotta say, don't fucking bring guns to protests or any kind of weapon. Protests are all about optics in today's world. It might have been different before today's media landscape, and where any camera anywhere can end up all over the internet and all over the television channels. But it's an optics game. That's what matters. Now, I understand how, like, the initial riots in Minneapolis, may have been necessary, debatably, because otherwise the media never would have picked up on it and the movement never would have grown. But the movement has grown. It is nationwide. At this point, nothing is more important than optics. So yes, if you go to a protest, what I would recommend is to just wear regular clothes and look as vulnerable as you can. If you go out there all geared up and with armor on and a shield, let alone a weapon, people think you're going for trouble. It doesn't look good. But if you go there and protest peacefully, clearly peacefully, and then you get attacked, that helps the cause. This is why, and people tell me, like, how can you ask people to do that? How can you ask people to sacrifice their own bodies for the cause? That's exactly what Gandhi and MLK did. And millions of people did. It sucks, but it's the only way to help the movement. If you go to a movement and start shit, or engage in violence even defensively, like, cameras can cut out the part that shows the initial escalation, and they'll only show you doing the defensive violence, and now it looks like it's offensive violence. This is the trick they've used against Antifa for all of time. I am anti-fascist, but we have to play the optics game. Don't engage in violence at protests. Don't support people who do. I'm a big believer in not giving the enemy what they want. We know, as a matter of fact, that white supremacists infiltrate BLM rallies and try to start shit. So why would you? Why would you give them what they want? They're trying to make us look bad, and then Antifa goes out there and helps them try to make us look bad. That's dumb. Don't give the enemy what they want. Okay, way too long. Sorry. It's just important stuff to talk about. I want to have conversations with people who disagree. I know some people who heard this are going to disagree. Just message me. I have contact information on my channel. I have my Twitter. It's at Re-Vera Life. You can DM me. That's available. You just follow me, DM me. Real easy. I'd love to have conversations with people about any of this if you disagree. Or if you don't think you're enough of an expert on a specific subject to have that conversation with me, get somebody you know who you think is to talk to me. I'll talk to anybody about anything I ever say on this channel. So that is a challenge. And like I said, I'll put $500 of my own money against anybody who thinks they can provide logical justification for voting for Biden based on any values that reasonable people would agree with. So we can discuss the values first, and then we'll see if you can provide logical justification for it. And so you can't do it. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your comments and people who like it. I'm obviously a super small-time YouTuber, and it does motivate me to do more content and better content when I see people have actually liked my stuff. They've commented. They've subscribed, up to 185 subscribers. Woo! So definitely appreciate it. Would appreciate it if you like, comment, subscribe. Thanks. I'll see you in the next one.